When Camilla Parker Bowles first stepped back into the royal spotlight in the early 2000s, few understood the emotional weight she carried into every room of Buckingham Palace. To many outsiders, she appeared composed, even confident. But behind the closed doors of the monarchy, her early days were defined by uncertainty, quiet judgment, and a constant feeling that every whisper might be about her. This wasn't a warm welcome. It was a test one she never asked for. Inside the palace corridors, she often walked with measured steps, conscious of the eyes that followed her. Staff who had served Diana for years remained polite but distant. Some smiled, some nodded. Yet the air carried a stiffness no words could disguise. Camilla herself later admitted privately to close friends that she felt like an intruder in a life that wasn't built for her. Every tradition was new. Every protocol felt like an exam she could fail. And every newspaper headline reminded her that much of the world still blamed her for a story far more complicated than the public ever knew. But what hurt most, what quietly shaped her early struggles, wasn't the press. It was the emotional weight of knowing she had to win the trust of a family still healing from its deepest wound. Yet even in those first difficult months, Camilla tried to keep her head high. She attended events with a measured smile, offered gentle kindness to the staff, and did her best to stay out of any spotlight she didn't absolutely need. Still, every night when the palace corridors fell silent, she faced the same question: will I ever truly belong here? This question would define the emotional battle that followed a battle fought far from the cameras in the quietest parts of her life. While Camilla quietly navigated the unfamiliar world inside the palace, an even greater challenge raged outside its gates. The British public was not ready to accept her. Not yet. For years, Camilla had been portrayed as the other woman, a figure woven into a narrative of heartbreak, tragedy, and betrayal. And though the real story was infinitely more complex, public memory is rarely kind and almost never forgiving. In her early royal years, every outing felt like stepping into a battlefield. Crowds gathered behind barriers, but their faces held a mix of curiosity and coldness. Some turned away. Some refused to clap. A few even muttered things she pretended not to hear. At charity engagements, she worked tirelessly to appear calm, shaking hands, smiling, thanking volunteers. But beneath the polished exterior, she often felt the weight of being judged before she even spoke a word. One royal aide later recalled that Camilla would sometimes pause before events, take a deep breath, and whisper, "I hope today is kind." But kindness was rare. Tabloid headlines dissected everything: her outfits, her expressions, her presence beside Charles. Even when she tried to stay in the background, photographers hunted her relentlessly, waiting for a single unguarded moment they could twist into a scandal. The palace PR team attempted to help, but they walked carefully. The institution itself had its own wounds to protect its own reputation, to rebuild after the turmoil of the 1990s. And this left Camilla standing in a strange, painful space, ignored by some inside the palace, rejected by many outside it, and judged by nearly everyone. Yet despite the backlash, she kept showing up, event after event, charity after charity, speech after speech. She wasn't trying to win popularity. She was simply trying to survive. And quietly, slowly, a shift began. Not in the public, not yet, but in Camilla herself. She started to understand that the battle she faced wasn't just about being accepted. It was about proving she deserved a place in a world that had every reason to push her away. If the public's judgment was harsh, the private atmosphere within the royal family was even more complicated. Acceptance inside the monarchy was never guaranteed. It had to be earned, and for Camilla, it was a path filled with small victories and quiet setbacks. In the early years, Camilla often felt she was moving through two separate worlds inside the palace. Some members of the family treated her with polite distance, maintaining formal courtesy but little warmth. Others, still grieving the past, found her presence difficult, not because of who she was, but because of what she represented. Most challenging of all was the sense that she had to rebuild trust that had been fractured long before she ever entered the royal spotlight. Royal aides later described Camilla as gentle, cautious, and extremely aware of her surroundings. She was careful with her words, careful with her body language, careful not to overstep in a family bound by tradition and unwritten rules. But behind that carefulness was something deeper, a fear of causing pain or appearing to replace someone who remained beloved in the hearts of the nation. Family gatherings were the hardest. Camilla kept to Charles's side, speaking only when spoken to, offering warm smiles, but never pushing herself forward. She understood that her presence alone carried emotion, and she was determined to let time, not pressure, define her place. Despite this, there were moments of real kindness. The Queen, known for her measured judgment, observed Camilla with quiet interest. Over time, she began to recognize something many had overlooked: Camilla's unwavering loyalty to Charles, her genuine sense of duty, and her ability to bring calm where there had once been turmoil. Princess Anne maintained a composed distance, respectful but reserved. Prince William and Prince Harry, still navigating their own emotional journeys, treated her with formality during those early years. It was a delicate balance for everyone. No one wanted to reopen old wounds, but no one knew exactly how to move forward either. And so Camilla learned to live in the spaces between the pauses in conversations, the polite smiles, the moments when the room grew quiet and she wasn't entirely sure she belonged. Yet through all of it, she never lashed out, never complained publicly, never asked for sympathy. She simply did what she had always done throughout her life. She endured. What the world didn't see was that behind every photograph of her smiling beside Charles, there was a quiet, emotional battle unfolding inside the palace, one she fought with grace, restraint, and a strength few imagined she possessed. For years, Camilla lived in the background, a quiet presence in a world that rarely welcomed her. But history has a way of shifting quietly, almost imperceptibly, until one day, everything is different. Her turning point didn't come from a single event. It came from consistency, the one thing the monarchy values above all else. A steady hand in a turbulent institution. As the royal family moved through the early 2000s, the public's attention was pulled toward modern scandals, shifting roles, and a monarchy redefining its place in a changing world. Amid all this, Camilla remained stable, warm, and, most importantly, reliable. She showed up to every engagement. She listened. She supported Charles without overshadowing him, and she found a way to make people comfortable, even those who had once been hesitant to greet her. Behind palace doors, this quiet consistency did not go unnoticed. The Queen's subtle approval. One of the most significant markers of Camilla's growing acceptance was the gradual warmth shown by Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen valued duty above emotion. She looked at actions, not headlines, and Camilla's actions spoke clearly: respect, restraint, loyalty, and hard work. The Queen's approval didn't arrive as a grand gesture. It came in small steps: invitations, smiles, inclusion in key moments. To the public, these seemed ordinary. Inside the royal family, they were monumental. A royal aide once said that the Queen admired Camilla for bringing peace and stability to the Prince of Wales's life, a subtle but profound acknowledgement, shifting public opinion. Gradually, the country softened too. Not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly, as Camilla found her voice through charity work, especially in areas she cared deeply about. Osteoporosis awareness, domestic abuse support, literacy program, these weren't chosen for image. They were chosen from experience, empathy, and personal connection. People began to see her not as a symbol of the past, but as her own person, gentle, thoughtful, modest, and surprisingly shy beneath the royal exterior. What this meant for Camilla. For the first time since stepping into Charles's world, Camilla felt the atmosphere shift. Staff became warmer. Family members began initiating conversations. Public crowds weren't as cold, and the tabloids, while never kind, started to recognize her stability and contribution. It wasn't acceptance yet, not fully, but it was hope. It was the first time Camilla could walk through a palace hallway without feeling the need to hold her breath. It was the first time she realized the battle she fought in silence was beginning finally to turn in her favor. By the time the world looked again, Camilla was no longer the uncertain woman quietly navigating palace corridors. She had become something far more powerful and far more unexpected: a steady presence, a calming force, a partner who strengthened the future king and carried a quiet dignity that even her critics could no longer deny. Standing beside Charles, not behind him. Through the years, Camilla proved that she was not simply an addition to the royal family. She was an essential part of Charles's life and work. Her influence was subtle but unmistakable. At public engagements, she gave him confidence. At state events, she offered stability. And in private, she became the grounding presence he had waited decades to have openly by his side. When the cameras captured them together, something had changed, not the roles, but the comfort, the sense that after a lifetime of storms, both had finally found a harbor, earning the nation's respect. Respect didn't arrive suddenly. It arrived the same way Camilla lived her royal life quietly. By her 60s and 70s, the public began to see her differently, not as a symbol of turmoil, but as a woman who endured extraordinary scrutiny with grace. Her charity work expanded, touching people who had never followed royal news. Her warm interactions, especially with survivors of domestic abuse and children learning to read, revealed a depth the tabloids had ignored for years. And gradually, almost imperceptibly, the narrative of scandal shifted into a narrative of service. The Queen's final gesture. Perhaps the most defining moment of Camilla's journey came late in Queen Elizabeth II's reign, when the Queen expressed her wish for Camilla to become Queen Consort. It was more than a title. It was the final piece of a long, painful puzzle, a sign of trust, recognition, and acceptance at the highest level. For Camilla, it wasn't triumph. It wasn't vindication. It was relief. A quiet acknowledgement that her years of endurance had finally meant something. The emotional battle she never spoke about. Despite the acceptance she eventually earned, Camilla never publicly discussed the emotional struggle of her early years. Not the cold receptions, not the headlines, not the silent rooms where she wondered if she would ever belong. Instead, she carried those memories with the same quiet strength that defined her from the beginning. Today, as Queen Consort, she is more than the narrative the world once forced upon her. She is a woman who walked through decades of judgment and emerged with dignity, purpose, and a gentle steadiness that even her harshest critics cannot deny. Her story is not one of scandal. It is one of endurance, a long private battle fought behind closed doors, and a victory earned not by force, but by patience, humility, and humanity.